Hi there. Today I'm going to jump right in the deep end. So let's talk about this collective trauma that we're all experiencing, or at least most of us are experiencing, as a result of this environmental trauma that we're living through in the current time. I'm going to discuss the nature of the problem. I'm going to discuss some of the nuances and effects of the problem, and then talk a little bit about some possible ways that we can respond as individuals and as communities. I'm Sylvain of Soul and Soil, Counselling and Coaching, and this is a place where we explore the intersection of environmentalism and mental health, where we build community and find solutions. Now, given the nature of this channel, I'm going to be focusing in on the environmental aspect of the current crisis that we're living through, but much of what I'm saying applies just as much to the political and economic and cultural crisis that's going on at the same time. And of course, all of these pieces are deeply interconnected. But just to keep things simple, we're going to focus on the environmental piece for now. Now, just so that we're clear, trauma is generally defined as an experience which is distressing to the extent that it overwhelms our ability to cope. And a common misconception is that the event itself is what we call the trauma, which is not entirely accurate. The fact is that the event may or may not be traumatic to an individual person, but it's the impact, the enduring emotional and psychological distress, which is the actual trauma in psychological terms. And when I say collective trauma in this video, what I'm talking about is not just a specific person's personal experience and enduring distress as the result of experiences and circumstances, but an experience of enduring distress and dysfunction on a psychological and emotional level experienced by the collective, by the whole, by society. Now, in discussing these topics, I've often had people bring up the point that there have been environmental crises throughout human history. There have been, political and cultural and economic crises throughout human history. How is this any different? And I think that's a valid and fair point to bring up. And what I generally say in response to that is that, yes, there absolutely have been all kinds of crises throughout human history. And I would say that there have been crises worse than what we're experiencing now. But that in no way invalidates the experiences and the crisis that we're experiencing right now. And something that makes our current crisis very unique is that it's occurring on a global scale. And the fact is, the Earth is our only home. And if we don't turn this around, yes, the Earth will survive in a depleted way. But the question is, will we? So, having kind of wrapped our heads around the uniqueness of our current situation, let's get back to this idea of collective trauma. How does it actually manifest? This incredible stress that so many of us are experiencing based on the fact that, our climate is becoming increasingly unpredictable, our soil is becoming depleted, and our food increasingly lacking in nutrition. Our freshwater resources, and I'm talking about even our deep aquifers, becoming increasingly depleted. These are immense crises. So what impacts are these having on us? Just to list off a few, and I'm going to use my notes here because I need to. We're experiencing incredible social division and polarization. We see this especially in the political sphere, but the environmental crisis and the political crisis that we're experiencing right now at the same time overlap to a considerable degree. That should come as a surprise to nobody. We individually and collectively are experiencing and dealing with this crisis through incredible amounts of dissociation. And I mean, it's been said that we live in an age of distraction with, all of the media and different ways we have of numbing and avoiding the crises and the issues at hand, avoiding our own lives, which is a tragedy by any measure. We are collectively experiencing, and some more than others, grief, anxiety, panic, and despair. We're experiencing, a lot of us, a degree of shutdown and giving up on life, giving up on the world. That is troubling, but also deeply understandable and grounds for profound compassion, I would say. A lot of us are experiencing, and I can certainly say this, I mean, I can say all of this from personal experience, but this in particular, great degrees of emotional dysregulation, incredible stress, anger, grief again, as I mentioned. And so being able to respond to these issues effectively when we're in a state of often perpetual emotional dysregulation is a considerable issue. Another way this shows up for a lot of us, withdrawal and isolation. It's said that we're living through an age of isolation. There's a loneliness epidemic going on right now, and I think a lot of that is because people are just so overwhelmed and so hopeless with the state of the world that our capacity for social engagement, for investing in community, is more limited than it often has been in the past. And of course, there are many other factors to this loneliness and isolation epidemic, but I don't want this video to be an hour long, so I won't get into that. We may experience insomnia as a result of stress about the world, about the environment. We may experience misanthropy, and again, this is an area where there's a lot of that overlap. We may hate humanity for what it's doing to the world, for the greed and short-sightedness and ignorance that leads to the way that we treat not only the natural environment, but to our fellow humans, or of our fellow humans. And at a time when it's so crucial for us to be building community, to be building connection with ourselves, with each other, and with the natural environment, it's no wonder that so many of us hate people. Now, I want to start off by talking about some of the more tangible effects that this crisis is having on a lot of us. We're seeing it, especially in terms of the depletion of our clean air and water resources, our food security on local and more national, global level, especially with not only the ecological crises that are happening, but the wars that are happening worldwide. We're also seeing increases of climate migration from many parts of the world as they become increasingly uninhabitable because of changing weather patterns, or changing climate patterns, I should say. We're seeing loss of security in terms of insurance companies no longer covering fire and flood damage in areas where those are increasingly prevalent phenomena. I mean, we see this in the recent fires in Los Angeles, and I mean, you know, in Florida, for instance, where flooding is becoming an increasingly dire situation. Insurance companies are no longer covering that kind of damage, so people's security in their homes is becoming increasingly, or is coming increasingly into question. And as people become increasingly aware of the crises that are going on, we're seeing in a very widespread way, and I see this as I talk to people as a therapist and just as a concerned person, that people are really losing hope in the future. One way that this really shows up is that increasingly people are deciding not to have children. People who may have really leaned into this desire to start families and to invest their energy into raising children are deciding that this world is no longer a secure enough place to do that. And that comes with a really heavy emotional burden for a lot of people. A lot of people are not necessarily clued into the environmental and political crises that we're going through, but the economic really touches on all of us. And a lot of people are deciding not to have children simply because it's unaffordable to. This endless progression and this endless sense of improvement that we've had in Western culture, of being able to pass on a better world to our children and to ensure better lives for our children than we experienced. That's no longer a given. In fact, it no longer seems like a possibility, I think, to most people. In that spirit, it needs to be said that this narrative of what it means to live in the prosperous and privileged West that so many of us grew up with, that most of us grew up with realistically, we're having to rewrite that narrative. We're having to rewrite that story and come to a new understanding of what life means to us, what we're here for. If we're not able to pass on a livable world to our children, what are we actually here for? An extension of that is, what I'm seeing is that a lot of us have really lost the ability to even imagine a worthwhile future, a future that's worth living for, a future that's worth working for. I also see a lot of people giving up hope. Not necessarily for their own lives. We don't live on this earth for very long, and as difficult as life is becoming for a lot of us, especially in the younger generations, it'll probably be somewhat manageable in our lifetimes, if not in our children's lifetimes. And that's one part of it. But, I work with people who are studying in the environmental sciences and fish and wildlife and that kind of thing. And increasingly, I'm talking to these people, and they're just, wanting to drop out of school, wanting to give up on their career dreams, because as they see people like Donald Trump and Pierre Poilievre gaining political power, they wonder, what's the point of even trying? The majority of the populace does not care. People are just brainwashed, people are distracted, and we are really flushing our civilization and our culture and our way of life down the drain. So what is the point of even trying? And I want to fight tooth and nail against that mindset, but at the same time, I completely understand, and I've felt that way for much of my life as well. And that's why I'm here. I'm trying to help people who care to fight back and to find the strength to move on. And in the spirit of what I've been saying, it's all too easy for our traumas and our personal mental health struggles to become obstacles to us showing up the way that we want to show up in the world, to achieve the things that we want in the world, to make a positive difference. And I see too many people who really do care about the state of the world, the state of our environment. People who really want to make the world a more beautiful, a more healthy, a more integral place to live, who just are so hampered by their own mental health problems. And I see this being one of the most crucial problems, that the most sensitive people are the ones who want to make a difference, and they're also the ones who are the most susceptible to struggling with mental health issues because of these problems, because of the crises that are going on. And that's why I'm here again. And so that kind of sums up in brief the struggles that people have related to these issues. I guess the only other point that I would really want to touch on in this regard is that another conversation I have with a lot of people, and another thing that I struggle with myself, is an incredible level of grief to do with the degradation, the destruction of our natural ecosystems, and the extinction or even endangerment of the species that surround us, the plant species, the animal species. Because when we are sensitive in this way, and when we recognize ourselves as being part of this greater whole, part of this very integral and unified ecosystem, when we recognize ourselves as just being leaves on the tree of the web of life, that's a mixed metaphor for you, to see it dying all around us, to see it weakening, is to see ourselves dying and weakening. And how can we not grieve when we experience that? So for those of you who are struggling with the state of the world, let's say, who are really struggling with your mental health, who wish you could be more involved, and who are just really finding ways of doing that in ways that feel good, that are effective. First off, I want to say that I really understand the struggle. I personally would love to be more involved in activism and community organizing and all that kind of thing than I am. But we all have varying levels of ability, of capacity, of privilege, and I really want to acknowledge that. So if you are feeling shame about your limitations, please don't. We're all working with a different toolkit, and we're all coming from different places. And I really want to honor that, and I want you to honor that in yourself as well. But seeing as we're talking about it, I'm going to present a few ideas, and if any of these resonate with you, I'd recommend looking further into how you can integrate these ideas into your life. The first one is just to start more conversations about environmentalism, about mental health, and about the intersection of these things, because these topics are not discussed nearly widely enough. Discuss these with your friends, with your family, even with your coworkers if it feels safe. And I recognize that often it doesn't. I've worked in many workplaces where, conservatism and ignorance was the rule. Next, I'd put a lot of emphasis on the personal decisions that you make, especially the way that you spend your money. Living in a capitalist system, the way that we spend our money is how we vote. I mean, like, voting every few years for a political candidate, it makes a little bit of a difference. But the thing is, the way you spend your money dictates the world that you live in. You know, when you spend money on morally bankrupt companies, you are advocating for moral bankruptcy. So be very careful how you spend your money. When you have time to go on vacation or go on holidays, see if you can do it more locally instead of engaging in recreational air travel, burning tons of fossil fuels just for fun. I would say join with people in your community to take action, and that could show up in so many different ways. Picking up trash, planting trees, starting a community garden where you can grow food, maybe food that could be donated to the less fortunate, less privileged in your community. I would advocate for arranging ride shares. Another idea is, if you are living in a community that doesn't have this already, tool libraries and libraries for all kinds of resources are incredibly important resources that we should all be investing in, rather than everybody, to stick with this example, buying their own tools. If you can just take out a saw or a drill for a certain amount of time, that saves you a lot of money, and it also reduces the amount of waste and consumption that we're all engaging in as a society. You can phone or write your local or regional representatives to advocate for the values that you hold. This may seem overwhelming and scary, I know. For people in the younger generations, getting on the phone feels often very anxiety-provoking. It can be terrifying, but emails are just as good. And the thing is, politicians care about staying in power. They care about getting votes. So if you let them know that what they're doing is totally against your values and that they are losing your votes by behaving in the ways that they're behaving, that often makes a difference. So I'd encourage you to do that. And the last few suggestions I've made have been very focused around, making a difference in the world around us. But in terms of bringing it back to mental health, I'd say spend more time out in nature. This is something that is difficult for a lot of us. I know the majority of humans nowadays live in cities, but at the same time, city parks exist, and there are ways of getting out in nature. And even if you can hardly leave your home, there are ways of exposing yourself to nature, even if that's, having houseplants. And the thing is, cultivating our appreciation for nature, our respect for nature, and our understanding of nature requires us to be in contact with nature. And if we're just in our homes, totally divorced from the natural world, with no exposure to plants and animals, it's very difficult for us to really have a visceral sense of the value that nature has to us as human beings. So if you listen to nothing else I've said in this video, please spend more time in nature, cultivate that relationship that you have with nature, recognize yourself as being part of nature, and this will really nurture your mental health. It'll nourish your mental health, I should say, and it will fuel your desire and your passion to fight for yourself, for the natural world, for your community. It's essential. Now, in this video, I've really just skimmed the surface. This is meant as just an inspiration and a jumping off point for you to come up with your own ideas, for you to think more about your relationship with nature, how it impacts your mental health, how the degradation of nature impacts your mental health especially, and what you can do about it. I've presented a very few ideas, but there's so much out there that you can do for yourself, for nature, for your community. And I would love to hear more ideas, for my own benefit, and also for the benefit of everyone else watching this video. If you can post in the comments what you do to maintain your mental health in the face of environmental crisis, as well as, all the political, economic crises that we're going through. What helps you? What makes you feel better? What gives you the strength to go on day after day in a world that is really struggling? And as a person that may or may not be really struggling, I want to know. And if you've stuck with me this long, thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you could hit the subscribe button below, that helps me to grow this channel, to build this project that I'm working on here with Soul and Soil, to reach more people, to help more people, to help the world. Like this video, all the things that we do here on YouTube. So thank you so much for watching. I believe that's all I have to say, so have a beautiful day.